Hello, everybody. Car Dreamer here, coming at you on behalf of D-Class and all things D-Class related. And today we're doing another discussion video after a nice little break from it. Tonight's discussion is going to be about whether save states and rewind features in modern releases of retro games is considered cheating or not beating the game. And I have two amazing guests with me today.
Oh, hi. I'm Autumn from Autumn's Orbit.
And I'm Dace from StoneBeak Productions.
Sweet. I thank you both for joining me tonight. It's been too long. And Autumn, I'm doubly happy to have you because this is the first discussion with you, I think.
I think so. Yeah.
So this is awesome. Dace is no stranger to D or D class.
So true.
But Ash would appreciate that one right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's just put the question out there and we'll just take turns and we can start with Autumn, ladies first. And so with modern releases of retro games, we'll take Final Fantasy. I think 8 and 7 have the feature. I believe... I know there's some other ones. I'm drawing a blank. There are other games that have the rewind feature, though I haven't used. I think Aladdin, The Lion King do. And save states are real popular with all the retro collections, including the mini systems. Save states are a huge thing with the NES and SNES and Genesis minis. Do you consider using those features cheating when you play those games?
The only thing that I find cheating in terms of the reboots of old retro games is the ability to fast forward. And let's say you're grinding it out in Final Fantasy VIII and you decide to fast forward through monster fights and all of that kind of stuff to level up. I find it's cheating when people take it to the next step and then fast forward, level up their character to like level 80 before they even like hit the first boss. And then the rest of the game is going to be like a breeze because they're no longer doing the grind as it should happen. You know what I mean? I mean, I guess in like games like that, you can just grind slowly up to level 80 before hitting the first boss if you wanted. But I don't think that's the idea of the game, is to grind to a high level and then go through the game. It's to experience the game as it goes on, grinding at a reasonable pace. So with the fast forward feature, I just find that just takes away from the experience of the game and actually working for it. But I do find that it's better for people who are coming back to the game after playing through it the first time in full, whereas like it would be more cheating for the newbies rather than the people who are more like seasoned, you know?
Yeah, I would agree in a sense, because like, yeah, we all know I just finished my Let's Play of Final Fantasy VIII Remastered on Switch, and that's exactly what I did. Like very early on, within the first handful of hours, I think I took my main party all the way up to level 100 right from the get-go, and I would not do that with a game I was playing for the first time, but because this is from what year, 1999 or something like that,
have no idea.
And I've played it numerous times, it's like, okay, there's nothing in, like, way back there was nothing stopping me from doing this early in the game, and there's nothing stopping me now, so I'm gonna do it now because there's no reason not to just do that. Like, because I'm coming from a place of content creation too. Like, I want the Let's Play to be as streamlined as possible. So for me, it was like a major benefit to be able to just, oh, great, I can do this now. I can do it in a fraction of the time. And I know that I have already beaten this game numerous times, so I don't consider it cheating. But from a place of someone playing it for the first time, yeah, like, I'm not sure cheating really enters into it, because whether you're doing something fast or slow, you're still going through the exact same motions. And there's nothing in the game that's, like I said, preventing you from leveling up whenever it is you want. Like, obviously, as you get further into a game, you get more experience from creatures. So the fact that someone's staying at the same spot and getting the same low-level experience says that they're committed. They almost deserve it because they're not waiting to get into fights against something that's going to give them more experience and level up faster. I think it kind of is just completely fair. Like, there's nothing in the game that's saying you can't do this whenever you want. So I don't view it as cheating, but at the same time, like, someone new to the game, it's like, okay, well, why not just play at the normal speed instead of just like having this blur of motion just to get through it quickly? It's like, well, if that's the case, why play the game? The only reason I'm using the speed up function is because I've done the game so many times and I don't need to repeat the exact same hours and hours that I've done so many times. So yeah, that's pretty much that.
Actually, I think you guys bring up very valid and interesting points of view, because I honestly, when I went into this, wasn't thinking of it from a content creator point of view. So a little background on why I even thought about this as a discussion is because I saw a tweet about it from a very prolific YouTube creator. So I know Autumn knows who the angry video game nerd is, but
Yes.
his friend Mike, who's on the show often and also does a channel, is the one who tweeted it, thinking that it was cheaters for just, in general, people who use the save states and the fast forward, as opposed to somebody from back in our day, I would argue, especially me and Autumn, you're I know you're younger than us, but like Dace and I's day and Mike's over at Cinemassacre, like we're from a different generation, so where there was no save state, there was no fast forward, and I just thought I kind of got where he was coming from, because when we wanted to beat the game, it was you played it till you beat the game, no matter what, and you started at the beginning every time you ran out of lives, or every time it said game over and you had no continues left, that's what you did. Nowadays you can just load up that, you can save whenever you're entering a new section, and if you lose, you load up that part instead of going all the way back to the beginning. So I saw that as a double-edged sword. So I think you guys brought up a very good point with the content creation, especially where it does significantly help streamline editing together videos. Also, if it's something Dace brought up a very good point with if it's something that you have played over and over and over again, you're not cheating yourself out of an experience at that point, because you've had the experience. And it's funny because I know from the videos I've done, the Let's Plays, especially the Super Nintendo games, the old retro games, I've utilized save states. 1, I'm not the best gamer. 2, it does help save time. I don't want to spend 20 hours on a game that should only take 5 hours to beat. Like, I just can't do it. So, and it's interesting because I was looking at it when Mike tweeted that, from on one hand, I was thinking more from the save state point of view, not the fast forward, to be fair. Because Autumn, I think you brought up a very good point with staying at the beginning and just zooming right to level 100. I didn't even think of that. I was thinking it more because when Dave said it, I wasn't thinking that's what he was doing in general. I figured he was just playing through the game in different areas and just kind of speeding up the fights. But to utilize that to get through a grinding, I didn't even think about that. And you're right. Nobody really in their right mind is going to waste 20 hours. How far are you into Final Fantasy? Oh, 20 hours. Oh, so you got to this part? Oh, no, dude. I didn't get to the first boss yet. I see that first area when you get out of the village, I'm right there. I don't see somebody doing that in real life. So that was actually a really good point. But I was thinking of save states where it's like, well, if all I'm utilizing is the save states, which is all I've used, I don't have a fast forward feature in anything I've done, then technically I still did the work. I still beat everything up to through every single moment. Did I have to sit there and do it all in one run? No. But then again, how is it any different than, granted, it's more modern games, but how is it any different than a more modern game that lets you save anywhere?
Mm-hmm.
No, I totally agree with that. I think save states are the ones that, like, I actually agree with, especially with people who, you know, have lives, they work jobs, they whatever. So to have a save state and not work through an entire game in one sitting, like when you can just save it, go to work, come back, finish it. Like, to me, that's a lot more practical and makes more sense, and I don't find that cheating as much as I do the fast forward option.
Yeah, I think like I don't really view the fast forward as cheating, because like all you're doing is speeding up time of what you would automatically be doing anyway when you choose to at any point in the game. With the save states, I kind of feel more drawn to the idea that like it's one thing to say like, oh yeah, okay, people have lives, but like anyone who's going to be playing a game that requires an investment, a learning curve, like certain degrees of difficulty and stuff, those aren't like everyone has a life, everyone has things on the go, but like you don't sit down for those types of games unless you have more than just like 2 minutes to play. So I think it really boils down to like how often is someone going to be using these whenever save states. Like if it's you use it, let's say every 2 inches of like your character making it across the screen or something, because it's just this crazy chaotic game and you're saving every step of the way just to make it through there. Well, it's like, okay, like why not just actually learn how to do it as opposed to just creeping through a game? Or why even be playing a game if that's how you're going to be going through it? Because like to me that doesn't sound like it's a very enjoyable experience if you're constantly like, oh great, I made it 3 pixels forward, save. Okay, now we made it 4 more pixels forward. Like I get, like to me that would kind of be more cheating than not. Whereas like I love the function of being able to save, because it's like, okay, I've played for an hour, I want to save in this spot, that's great. Again, for content creation, that's perfect. I don't have to go like, oh, okay, well guys, we have a half hour left while we search for the next save point because we're 30 minutes from the one we just were at and now I have no idea where the next one is. So it's like, it's not practical for recording, but that's where just being able to save anywhere is like, okay, great, we just finished this part and now we can save and that's the end of the episode. Perfect. So I think it really boils down to the intention of the person playing and how they're using these save states.
I would argue it's through any of these new things they're adding, fast forward, rewind, save, whatever, it's, are you going to abuse it or are you going to use it to its like its potential of like helping you through the game at like a regular pace that anyone else would use it? But if you're going to use it to abuse the game and get farther ahead, I think that's where the issue is. Because with the save state you were talking about being just like creeping forward and just saving just so that you're constantly
making progress,
without having to redo the whole level over again or whatever the game is. But yeah, like it's interesting because I didn't even think about that in terms of saving every 2 seconds to make it through just to get to that point. So if you do die in the fight, you're just right back to where you were and you know what to do the next time.
Yep.
And so I didn't even think of it that way, but I think it comes down to exactly the intention and are you going to abuse the new features or are you going to just use it as it's supposed to be used?
Yeah. And I think, when I think of abuse, I'll just use the Final Fantasy VIII me grinding to 100 example. I think I don't view that as abuse personally, because it's like if I want to be prepared to just streamline and blast through the rest of my recording, for instance, or like if someone else is just playing the game, like I said, there's nothing stopping you from doing that. And if it's going to help, then it's like, okay, great, I can choose to do it right then and there. It's going to take a hell of a lot longer. And that's why I'm thankful for the fast forward, because it's like with old style RPGs, like animations for like whether you're summoning a creature, like the attack, like when you just go up to strike an enemy, like we're talking a lot of extra time. So it's like like it's not like today where things are made to be so much faster and more smooth. Not that I've played many like modern RPGs compared to the amount of classical RPGs that I've played, but I just know that there is a huge investment of time in just watching your characters, just watching the things they do, and it's like why all this extra time? So yeah.
Oh, that's fair. And again, I think those are all good discussions. Again, coming from the point of view of a content creator.
Mm-hmm.
But like, you know, going back to what you're saying, like you're right. Someone could theoretically in real time grind out to a level 100 in that first area of Final Fantasy, but we know realistically somebody's not going to take the time to do that in real life, like in real time. Like it's just, so I get why somebody would say that, if now not for the sake of recording a video later, but if they're doing it for their own personal gain, for fun, whatever, you know, quote unquote fun, I could see why somebody would say that's cheating, because then you did deprive yourself of that experience.
Yep.
I mean, again, speaking strictly, it's just someone who's going out there to play the game. It has nothing to do with content creating.
Yeah.
However, you know, the save state issue, when I did the Mega Man Game Boy games, at least 1 through 4, I did. Or did I do 1 through 3? I know I did at least 3 of them. Then, like, I was using save states. I would get so far, not 2 pixels, but I get a few rooms, and always before I did the boss fight, I saved in the boss gate.
Mm-hmm.
And even doing that, like, because what, I was completing a Game Boy game in 2 videos, so that's what, 2 hours as a content creator. But it must have taken me a good solid week of playing. I probably had like 8 hours of footage recorded trying to get through some of them.
Crazy, yeah.
Like, so for me, I feel like I didn't deprive myself, other than I saved myself frustration of doing the same stage over and over again once I know how to do it. And then now I'm learning the boss. So when I do it again, I'm still going to suck, but I know what to do.
Yeah,
and
totally.
I feel like I still beat that. I worked my way up to getting to that. I still died plenty of times to get to that point where I made the save state.
Mm-hmm.
And then the boss alone could take me several times to learn and understand the easiest and best way to do it. Like, there were times, it was really weird with the Game Boy ones, because I could go into the fight the first time, even knowing what the weapon was his weakest, and have my butt handed to me. Like, in no time flat, like, what the frick just happened? But the second I learned that there was a nuance that made the game... I'm going to use... I believe it was Quickman from Mega Man 2. In the Game Boy game. He was one of those, like, he just owned me. I could not figure out what the heck. But man, once you understood his pattern, you could do it without taking even a hit. It was so easy peasy. It was so weird. So, like, but I didn't even utilize in the save state. It's not like it was still trial and error and learning, and I still had to earn that victory over him. It's not like the save state was an auto win.
Yeah.
So that was my point of view on that. Like, so but yeah, I think you brought up a good point. If somebody's using it every 3 pixels just to inch it a little closer to something, yeah, you're kind of abusing it then. I get that. Like, come on, man. Like, take a little effort into it.
Yeah. And that's why I said, like, if that's, like, the way I would say it is, like, do you want, if you're sitting down, if you're consciously choosing, okay, I want to play through this game, is that how you want to play the game? Is that how you want to get through a game? And for most people, it's probably like, why not just play something else where you don't resort to that? Like, if it's so challenging, then just play something else, or just put the time and energy into it to get good at it, so that you don't have to go through this painstakingly lengthy and tedious process of just constantly loading the last 5 pixels or whatever the case is. At the same time, another thing I'll say is that, like, just with this whole idea of, like, oh, cheating or, like, whatever, I think a lot of people have a certain ego about it. It's just like I don't care. Like, let's say for instance, Celeste, that game can have some serious challenges for sure. And they do have an assist mode. So I think I've never used it, but from what I recall, you can do something like slow motion, and I think there might be a rewind or whatever. It's like not everyone cares about going through a game the way like I might want to. And I don't think that has anything to do with cheating, to be honest. Like, I may use it in terms of like comparing, like, oh, okay, this is cheating compared to this, but like at the end of the day, I don't actually care, because someone might be like, oh, that looks like a really cool game. I know that I'm not going to get through it normally, but hey, there's this assist mode, so I can at least see the visuals and like hear the music. So it's not so much about like, oh, can you do the whole game from start to finish with one life or anything like that. It's like everyone has their own reasons for liking a game, for choosing to play it, and so yeah.
Again, I think it comes down to intention. Like,
Yep.
people may want to take a different approach to a game that they find like absolutely, like Celeste, for example. They may find that too hard and they want to go through it on assist mode, but they still want to get through the game, play the game, see the visuals, blah blah blah. Like, but that is still the intention, is they want to play the game fairly. To, even if there is an assist mode, it's like the same in high school. If you choose a university course or if you choose an applied course, like, doesn't matter which one you choose as long as you're going through the motions and you're putting in that effort, right? It's just a matter of which level you like to work at. And so I don't think it's cheating if you use an assist mode. I think it's cheating if you use the assist mode to get through the stuff just to get ahead, to like, you know, like it's the intention behind it. So I don't think that kind of stuff would count as cheating. It's really the mindset that goes into the functions of the game.
Yeah, and I think that'll apply to some games more so than not, because like in Celeste, it's not like you can do anything in, like, let's say the starting room to prepare for the rest of the game. Like, it's just like you just do screen by screen, whereas in Final Fantasy, like grinding out, it's like, oh, what was I gonna say? Yeah, like, I think it's just one of those things, like, I won't see it as cheating, because it's like, whether I level up to level 100 at the start of the game or gradually, I'm still going to beat it. I'm still going to beat every boss. I'm still going to be strong enough to beat every boss as I go. If I get to a point where I'm not strong enough, then I will just level up at that point. So it's like, okay, well, is it cheating to level up at that point then? So in that sense, it's like, well, yeah, like, I don't focus so much on like the when and the where, because there's nothing, like I said, in the game, there's nothing preventing you. And it's interesting too, because like when I think about this whole idea of like cheating in games, for games that have assist modes, games that now have fast forward options, auto saves, like all that kind of stuff, it's like, how can it be cheating if they have built these into it? I think it would be more cheating if someone discovered a way to do things that
Like
they,
cheat codes.
Yeah, like cheat codes, or like something to do with like glitches or programming. Like, for instance, Link's Awakening, there's a trick you can do where you press certain things when you're transitioning from one screen to another, and literally after getting your sword from the beach, which is at the very start, you can go straight in to fight the end boss. So it's like, I think in a sense I would consider that cheating, compared to, yeah, like some of the other things that have come up where it's actually built into the game to be able to do these things.
No, and I would agree. And it's funny because I really think some of the people who have picked up on this topic on Twitter, because Mike is the first one I saw start it, and then I've seen other Twitter people that I follow or have consistently showed up on my feed comment on the other, or on it as well. I feel like some of the people complaining how, oh, you didn't really beat the game, are the same people who grew up using some of these cheat codes, you know, most infinite one being the Konami code from like Contra and all that, and Ninja Turtle. So it's like, I mean, a little bit of a hypocrite there. But on the flip side of that, I remember growing up, and I'll be the first to say, yeah, I used the cheat codes in Ninja Turtles. I had a Game Genie on the Nintendo and Super Nintendo. I used cheat code, but I went through the game first normally before I ever got them. So the Game Genie and things like that kind of made going back to the older games a whole new experience, because especially with Game Genie, you could just screw to heck with all the game physics and everything else that went on in that game. Yeah. So, I mean, I think it was fair to say some people made the compromise, like, it doesn't matter how you play the game. If you want to use these devices or you want to use these, the rewind or save states, it doesn't matter if that's how you want to play, good for you. If you want to go through it the OG way, that's fine. The only thing, to be fair to say, it is not the same experience. And I think that's a fair compromise in a kind of a closing statement type of way. Like, it really is not the same experience. It never will be. Yeah.
No, I really like that. And I think, another thing that comes to mind is, like, the people who make these games, they're not even saying to get to the end. It's like, you play as far as you want or as far as you're determined to go. Like, it's not like the people who made Final Fantasy VIII were like, oh, the object is to beat disc 4. Like, no one has ever said that. So it's like, you can do whatever you want.
It's right. Yeah, all they're saying is buy my game. That was the extent of what they was at. Like, we just want you to. We want to make $60 if you don't mind.
Yeah, for sure.
But I'm sorry. Go on.
But yeah, no. Like, I totally hear that. Like, there are certain Game Boy games where I was just excited because I got the Game Boy Game Genie thing, and it was like, oh, sweet. Like, I can just go through this game that, at the time, and being like very young at the time, like there were certain games that I just didn't care to grind through or beat. But using that, it was like, wow, this is a blast. I can actually see what happens. Whereas if I didn't have that at the time, or whatever the case was, I might have just been like, okay, like, I played the first couple levels and it was just too much for me at that point. Another thing with, like, the old games that are now having like different perks added to them at this point in time, I think in a sense it kind of adds new breath, like just fresh life to it. Because if you were saying, like, and this is excluding games that I love so much that I would play anytime, every year, year after year, but if it was like, okay, well, yeah, like, I had this on PlayStation and it wasn't one of my favorites, but it's got assist mode now, or it has like a speed up function, and it's like, okay, great, like, I can play it again because I know it's not going to be a 60 or 80 hour investment. So I think in that sense, this just ties back into the whole thing of, those who have already done the work in the past. It's just an opportunity to be like, great, I can have that experience without putting my all into it again, like I've done countless times. So
no, I think that's a pretty good summation. I mean, honestly, and it's funny because there were games even growing up, like, that I mean, I can say I love the games, but I don't know, but, you know, you're a kid, so your mentality of what loving a game is different than when you're an adult. And I can look back and say I really didn't love the game. I loved the franchise the game was based on. And then, like, okay, so, like, good example would be the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle game for the NES. That game was hard as frick for me. And for actually, it's reputable for being an extremely hard game to beat. And I never beat it legit. So when I finally did beat it, I was using a Game Genie. Now, it wasn't the level skip. It wasn't to give me invulnerability. It wasn't anything like that. But the secondary weapons you could pick up in the game, I used it to get infinite of them. Because there was a really powerful one. So that helped me get through the final couple stages. And that was the only way I could beat that game. However, that didn't stop me from learning pat. I still went about my approach trying to like pretend not to take a hit or try to use legitimate methods just to see what I could do.
Yeah.
And I found out when it came to the main boss, I didn't even need the weapon. He was so easy, you could cheese him, which really threw me off. But like, if it wasn't for that, I would never have beaten that game. Same with so if I go today, like same with save state, like I'm sorry, Ghostbusters for the original NES. It was just not a great game, but I loved it because I was in the Ghostbusters, and that was all there was. That was the Ghostbuster game. There was nothing else. Never ever to this day have beat it. Never.
Wild.
Now I have seen this year, ironically, there is a glitch to help you to make you invulnerable on the stair on getting to the final part.
Mm-hmm.
That I could have used to go through, which I never knew about. So I always was trying to do it legit. I've even used Game Genie and still cannot beat that game because I had such a hard time getting through one area. But like now with save states, I don't mind going back to some games and giving them a shot and sticking with it more. Like Ghostbusters is one now that it's on my Super Nintendo Mini. I can use a save state and save right before I go into the thing instead of investing hours and hours to get to that point, which I've proven time and again I can do.
Yeah.
So for me, if I were to do that, I would be doing it to record for the sake of the channel. Batman Returns was one I recorded for the channel that I had never beaten as a kid and played quite a bit. I mean, that was a hard as heck game to play. And I don't have the skills anymore to do it. Not that I had them growing up, but I had better skills then. So for me, it's the only way, like I think Autumn was saying, it's the only way I'm going to even experience some of the games in their fullness, story-wise, stage-wise. I understand I may not have earned it hardcore OG-wise, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay to just say, hey, I played the game start to finish. I'm okay with how I did it.
Yeah.
And to say, at the end of the day, you going through it the OG way, one stage at a time, your 3 lives, whatever. The story didn't change between you doing it that way and me using a save state. It's the same story. And that's kind of more what I'm into is the story versus... Don't get me wrong, gameplay is a huge factor, but I mean, it doesn't take away from me if I know that's the only way I'm going to get through some games that I genuinely want to play.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And yeah, another thing that comes to mind too is like, it's easy for people who grew up before there were all sorts of these benefits and ways of like cheating, and to now say like, oh well, it's cheating because like this and that, and back in my day, like blah blah blah. But it's like, well, okay, if we had grown up with all of that stuff right from the get-go, then it wouldn't be considered cheating. Like we would just view it as like, oh, this is how games are. Like we wouldn't view it through that lens really. So I think it really just, it kind of brings to mind the fact that gaming as a whole is evolving. And so like, yeah, years from now, it could just be as simple as like, oh yeah, like games have these things. No one thinks it's cheating because it's just like, it's just meant there to be explored and experienced how someone wants to. And it could be as simple as that. Who knows? We'll see.
No, I do think you're right. Gaming is definitely changing. But, you know, on the flip side, I can look at a save state as... let's go back to Mega Man again. Like, every time you beat a boss, you got one of those grid passwords.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, let's say you got one up until you went to fight Wily, the final boss.
True.
Okay, so if I beat the game, is it cheating if I go back and use the password to go do them again? Isn't that the same as the save state at that point?
Pretty much.
So, it's, I guess someone should then ask themselves, like, okay, what's the difference then? That grid code is the same thing as the save state.
Mm-hmm.
Once I beat the game, by your mentality or that statement that save states is cheating, I should never use that code once I beat that game.
Yeah. And like for me, my like when I say, it's not that I didn't view it as cheating, but like if it was going to be considered cheating by me, it was the example of like pixel by pixel, using it in that sense. Because like I could care less how someone goes through a game. And another thing too is like, for instance, Battletoads for Game Boy. That's one that I never beat normally.
Man.
And it's like there are a whole slew of factors. It's like, okay, maybe it was because I was young and I wasn't as developed as someone who played games. So maybe that's why I just resorted to the Game Genie. But I know for a fact, if I actually apply myself now, I could beat that, like, no problem. So it's like, okay, well, great. Like, I didn't do it back then, but I know I could if I apply myself. And then that brings me to another thought, is like, with so many games in this day and age, like, I don't mind the fact that, like, a lot of people are going to use these assist modes. A lot of people are going to use fast forward options, because it's like, and the save states for that matter, like, there's just so much on the go. Not everyone wants to just devote weeks to a single game before they touch something else. So there's that side of it too.
Very, very true.
I pretty much agree. Sorry, I've been quiet, but it's because I've been really just like agreeing and listening to everything you guys are saying. Because like, yeah, I just agree. Not much more to say about that.
No, that's okay. I don't mind someone on the side just going, I agree with you, CD, every so often.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
But y'all make us sound like boomers when we're like, oh, well, back in my day, this is how it was. But it's true that we are kind of that way.
And no, you're right. You're right. We do sound like boomers, but at the same time, like, it's not even an exaggeration. Nintendo having saved the gaming industry back when it did, when the NES came out. Like, I mean, Nintendo earned the reputation and coined that phrase, like, Nintendo tough, Nintendo hard was like, that was a standard. Like, to get through a Nintendo game, you earned it.
Yeah.
But that, I also think, falls into what Dace was saying too. Like, back then, I mean, was a whole different gaming experience because there wasn't 5 different consoles, each with hundreds of games.
Exactly.
You had one console that may have had 100 games, maybe. Yeah. Maybe. And that's after you let it go for a couple of years. Mm-hmm. Like, and you certainly weren't getting them all because you were a kid, your parents weren't made of money, like, and video gaming was still new. That to them, it's like, I'm not spending that much on a game. You youngins today, go play with a stick. But, but
why are you so good at that?
You know. But I mean, it's like, back then you had like maybe 4 or 5 games in your collection for a good while. Not to say people didn't have more, but you built up your collection slowly, so every game got played over and over. Yeah, like I'm surprised some games even had a battery save, like the save battery is still functioning because it's like not burnt out. Like, leave me alone, let me rest. You had the time to get good. So yeah, Nintendo was Nintendo hard, but you also had the time to overcome it. Mm-hmm. And like Dace was saying, like, nowadays you've got the economy is way more, as shoddy as we all say our economy is in this day and age. We are still better off than we were back then financially, is what we can afford, or maybe our priorities are just completely screwed up. And I'm okay with being a little of both. But I mean, you of all people guys know how much I have game wise. There's no way I'm getting through it legitimately going, I can't take up the mentality of I don't buy a new one until I beat one. Because a lot of people try, and I'm not knocking that per se for people who are limited on funds and stuff. I get what they're doing and I totally respect that. It's like, look, I can't afford every game you want. So here's the thing. Beat it, we'll trade it in and put it towards a new one. I respect that. I get where they're coming from. But I don't have that patience or mentality because by the time with the way gaming is, if you don't jump now, that game's going to be 4 times more the cost later down the road. There's a GameCube game I still want. It's almost $300 now to get it.
Yeah.
As opposed to $60 back then.
Yeah.
So it's like, I mean, I'd rather have my backlog grow and never get to it than miss out on the potential. Like, at least I have my library is growing. I may not get to it all, but man, the selection of games I have when I do get to one.
Absolutely.
So, I mean,
or even just knowing that, like, great, it's in my library. I can boot it up when I'm feeling that it's the moment, as opposed to like, oh, I really want to play that. Oh, but I never bought it 20 years ago. Great. Okay, well, that's that.
Pretty much. And you know, it's funny because emulation people kind of frown upon to an extent. If they frown upon it to an extent, yeah, because of the legal issues that surround upon it, but some hardcore people consider playing an emulated version of the game is not legit. So far as that, like if you were to do any of the actual legit competitions out there for speed runs and so forth, you're not allowed to do it on emulation. It has to go actual hardware. And I respect that and I get that. Because there's no saying what you're tweaking with your emulation that they
Yeah, absolutely.
I get that. But it definitely ties in like to what you were saying. You just don't have the time to play everything, so it's like games becoming more valuable as you put off buying them. Kind of pseudo persuade some people then to go out and get the emulators and the ROMs and to do things as opposed to. And I'll be the first one, obviously, to admit to that, but at the same time, it's like. And it's funny, ironically, as much as I have, I can't afford everything I want. But not that justifies it. Not that makes it right, per se, but at the same time, I don't have the time to sit here and try to play every game start to finish until I play a new one. So, I mean, I got to do what I can the best way to get through it. If that means a save state so I can save a few hours playing the game and I could say I had an experience with the game. I'd rather say I had an experience than no experience.
Yep, for sure. I totally hear that. Yeah, it's one thing, like even games that don't have the built-in perks that I play for the first time, which are like new games that just came out 2018, 2019, whatever. Like there are still plenty of times where it's like, okay, why isn't there... And it doesn't even need to be like I get to choose when to save, but like why aren't there more save points? Because like, let's say for instance in Valfaris, amazing game, but like there would be times where you die and then you're going through this whole section again. It's like, why? I've done this already up to a certain point. Just because I die, why am I going through all this extra work when there are other things to get at game-wise? It's right. So it's just one of those things like, yeah.
And it's funny to think about that because, again, when you go think back of the old Nintendo, it's the same way when you really think about it. Nothing that really hasn't changed in gaming. But back in Nintendo days, we didn't think of it like, oh my gosh, I already did this. You was kind of like, you were happy that you went through it, and when you've overcame it, you were just more happy that you overcame it rather than go, I've done this 20 million times. Why isn't there another save state? It was just like, you just stuck with it. Now it's like, come on, man, time is money. Time is a game. I need to get to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Funny to think about it. Like, it's just interesting.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of factors. Like if it's something that's a worthy challenge, then I don't mind how many times I go through it until it gets done. But when it's set up in a way where it's just like, wow, this is pointless in just the overall like why? Like I'm not sure how to really describe it other than like if I'm invested, if I'm stoked, then I will just grind through. Like, look at Dead Cells, for instance, the hundreds and hundreds of hours I put into that, and that never once felt like, oh, great, I've got to do this all over again. It was always like, I was just stoked to get back at it. I was stoked to go through all of it again. Whereas some games, I think they would actually benefit from having just a little more leniency because it's, and again, it's going to be different for every person because someone might view one game differently or be stoked for one game, whereas I might not be. But yeah, I think it's a toss-up. Like, some people are going to complain about autosaves, fast-forwarding, all that kind of stuff, and others aren't going to really care. I think the bottom line is, like, as long as you... Like, when you get... Let's say you use all these cheats or whatever are considered cheats, and you get to the end of the game, if you don't feel satisfied, that's going to sit with you. And if you're not going to act on that and do something differently in the future, then, okay, that's up to you. So I don't think it really ever matters what anyone else thinks or says, of course. So, yeah.
No, that's true. I will say the only thing, I think it might be a little unfair to do the comparison with Dead Cells, though, because at least with Dead Cells, you're not doing. You might be in the same area, but it's never the same twice.
Yeah, that's true.
And it's also the genre of the game too. Like, you're supposed to start from the very beginning again, and like, that's just how it is. That's part of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Well, true. Yeah, and that's true. I just meant, like, because it's a roguelite, the levels are constantly shifting to an extent. Like, the map may be the same, but there's always a factor that's random. Like your weapons, or where there's abilities or scrolls or something. Like, those little things keep each time you're doing the run a little bit different.
Yeah.
So it doesn't feel like a chore.
Yeah.
Whereas, though, let's say you're doing the original Super Mario Brothers, it's the same Gooba in the same place at the same level at the same time, and if you're dying 20 million times in the same spot because you can't get past it, that could be frustrating.
Yeah.
Same with Mega Man. You know, any of the hard games, like.
I think the determination plays a big role, though, because, like, let's say I just wasn't into Dead Cells, but I was like, oh, I've got to beat this game. It wouldn't matter if, like, enemies were in different places, I had different weapons. It would still be like, oh, I'm not getting there, and we're back to the starting level again. Like, even though it's randomly generated and all this kind of stuff, it wouldn't change the fact that, great, I'm back to the start. I'm back to doing all of this over again. So I really do feel like the drive and the excitement and just that burning passion for playing a game, when you connect on that level, just plays such a role for the repetition to not feel like a chore, to actually love getting back at. Like, just, oh man, just one more run, just one more attempt. Like, I can do it this time, like, just pushing through. Whereas for a lot of people, that might just push them away from playing the game ever again.
This is true. So we're actually hitting we're about the 50-minute mark on this. So I think we covered a lot of good different bases, honestly. And so I think this would be a good place to close it off.
Cool.
So I want to thank, again, Autumn from Autumn's Orbit and Dace of StoneBeak Productions for taking part in this discussion. This is really cool to have a three-person discussion.
You can say it three-way.
Three-way's allowed here.
But I mean, especially, and Autumn, double thanks to you, because you are, not only is this your first time on the channel, but this is like the first time I think we've had any female on D-Class.
Whoa!
I know, so it's cool to get the lady perspective and to have a female gamer, and
Totally.
so it's just been a lot of fun, and you two are my best friends, so it's also doubly fun to just talk to you guys. So I want to appreciate you all for being here. I think this was an awesome topic. So, not that he ever sees my channel, but I think I owe Mike Matai from Cinemaskers for tweeting that to give the idea for this discussion. So should definitely thank him.
I think it's a great one too. So
Yeah,
I'm
I had
glad
a blast for sure. Yeah, really engaging talk and a lot of different perspectives. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
It was. So thank you everybody for being here. Thank you for those who watch the video. Just remember to like and subscribe. And until next time, send me money.
See ya.
See ya.